Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Emily White from Sourcewell, or as some people know her, the TikTok Queen, or the Queen of TikTok. Emily, thanks so much for joining me. It was great to meet you at the Expo earlier this week as well. How the devil are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it was so nice to meet in person a couple of days ago just before this. I did laugh a bit at that introduction, but yeah, thank you very much.
I think, to be fair, if people called me the TikTok King, I'd probably cringe as well, but... we like to have fun. Well, before we get into the episode, when I first set my TikTok up February last year, like Emily was like, she just popped up on my TikTok straight away, and I saw like how you were doing your cold calls and stuff, and without kind of like trying to blow smoke, it was a bit of an inspiration for me as somebody that didn't really know how to utilize TikTok. I don't really post on Instagram that much or anything. It's mainly just LinkedIn. But full transparency, I burnt the fuck out doing TikTok because I was trying to do everything else in the business. I was on site 3 days a week, and then it just became an awful lot. But you know, you seem to be absolutely smashing it on there, and obviously that will be a topic that we're going to cover. But before we get into the show and into the topics, Emily, you know, some people might not know who you are, what you do. Give us a bit of an intro to who you are and what you do.
Sure. So yeah, I work in account management and business development at Sourcewell. I started off doing pure business development, and I couldn't let it go, so I'm still doing it now. But basically, if people out there haven't heard of Sourcewell, it's a recruitment engagement platform that's all about having a communication with people, because often it's not, you know, finding the right people, it's actually getting a conversation with them. So the way we help people is they come to us if they aren't calling enough, aren't following up enough, they don't have a standard process to follow, or they're spending loads and loads of time doing manually updating the CRM each week, or actually not updating it at all. That's how we're helping people at the moment.
Amazing stuff. I have to say, when I first saw TikTok, so when I was the L&D manager in my last Sourcewell, when I was the L&D manager, we never had any automation or email marketing tools in my job as a recruiter. It was all manual, and this is going to show my age, and I'm not even that old, but we even done e-shots through Excel. I don't know how, but that was a thing that we done back in the day. So when I first saw Sourcewell, and the CEO sat me down and was like, look, you're going to have to like upskill people on this. It's, you know, email, we're going to e-shot the database, blah, blah, blah. And I've done some e-shots before, but when I could see like the custom variables and like, you know, the fact that you can break up the cadence with phone calls and LinkedIn emails and stuff, I was like, fuck me, where was this when I started recruitment, man? This is insane.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm quite lucky because when I started doing outreach, I had Sourcewell straight away, so kind of didn't know what it was like to not have loads of things automated, have to remember to follow up, have to track everything on the CRM. Like, I've never lived in that world, so when I speak to people that are in that, and I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? So yeah, I'm quite lucky.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome tool, to be fair, and you know, I don't know many other companies that do that, do a similar thing. But in terms of the topics we're going to discuss today, that will be one, the cold outreach, actually talking about how to almost like master your cold email outreach to clients and what your sort of sales funnel pipeline kind of thing looks like. Obviously, on your TikTok is a lot of the, at least what I used to see was a lot of the cold calls that you would do. I'm a massive proponent of cold calls, or I reframe them to warm calls. So we'll talk through kind of your techniques, your openers, some of the questions you ask and stuff like that. There's another topic that Emily brought up with me when we first spoke about spending your time in the right place, which the guest that I had on around the house today was talking about, you know, being super strict with your time and being hyper focused and really trying your best to be on the phone as much as possible, which we'll talk about. And then, of course, the final topic we'll talk about is the personal branding stuff, of course, utilizing TikTok, which I don't know many people that even bother with it, to be honest with you, but it's definitely something to utilize. And obviously, we'll talk about the stuff around LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just to start things off then, structuring a cold outreach. So when I was in recruitment, I said this on the podcast so many times, I didn't really have a process, Emily, to be honest with you. It was very much like, find out what your ICP is, find out what types of customers you want to speak to, and just try and call as many people, go to as many trade shows as possible, build relationships. But I never really had like a 4 or 5 step email spec out. I never had like, it was just, I had a list of clients and I look on the database. If I've left a voicemail, a couple of that, call them. And that was kind of it, really. So tell me, I guess to start things off, it'd be good to hear kind of what your outreach is and where the similarities could be for recruiters, business owners listening to incorporate into their companies.
Sure. So for me, kind of playing it more like kind of what you mentioned, not really having a process, just sends, shivers down my spine. It's just not my approach. Fair enough if it works for you, but I'm so like data focused, data driven. I'm A/B testing. That is how I know how I do my approach. So for example, in Sourcewell we have like campaigns, so that is my outreach structure. I'm always testing different ones out against each other. I'm always looking at the data of my open rates, my reply rates, my meetings booked rates. Once a month I see, okay, which ones are most successful. I look at my team, where are they being successful? What can I borrow from them? What's not working so well anymore, because the market, is just constantly changing. And A/B testing constantly. So for example, right now for me, I know that having a 9-step business development approach that runs over 22 working days gives me a 13% meeting rate. And for me right now, that consists, it goes, I know off by heart, email, connection request, email, phone, LinkedIn video, or if I'm not connected, that kind of puts a spanner in my works, and I go for an in-mail, which I'm not so much of a fan of, and then I phone, then I do a voice note, email, phone. That is my process. That is what works for me. Yes, I'm going to test out different things in between time, but I know that is a structure that works. I know that 72% of my responses come after the 3rd touch point. So if I'm not doing any more than that, I'm not doing the best that I can. I know that 66% of my meetings come from the phone call, so I need to add more phone steps in. Like, I always look at the data, what's working for me, and that's how I build out my cold outreach.
Damn, this is amazing to see how prepared you were for this podcast, because like back in the day, like I just had zero process, and when I moved into L&D, you can't scale personality. You do you know what I mean? You can't be like, oh, just make loads of calls, build relationships with people. That's not scalable, because not everyone has the ability to do that. And I always say to business owners when I go into a new business that, you can have somebody that is ultra process orientated, ultra detail orientated, and be a high performing consultant top biller. And you can have someone that is, the old me that was super scatty, but like the best relationship builder, could charm the socks off of any client and win most retained business. But going into L&D and then utilizing different tech stacks and having the data there is absolutely crucial. Whenever I sit down with a business and I say, what's your goals in the next 3 to 5 years? How are you tracking your data? And they go, oh, what do you mean track your data? When you said you get shivers up your spine, that sends shivers up my spine.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And you're right. Like in those steps, I mean, if I just told someone, those are the steps, you go and do it, we're still going to have different results. Like what I'm putting in the content, I'm still A/B testing that. I'm personalizing those steps in there. I'm doing research. I'm looking at their LinkedIn profile. I'm mentioning that in my cold outreach as well. And with that as well, it's that structure is there to keep you accountable. It's to make sure you're following up with every single person you're reaching out to give yourself the best shot. It's not to limit you. So for example, if you're seeing someone's opening a lot of your messages, or they're viewing your LinkedIn profile quite a lot, or they're opening something you sent ages ago, go and make another phone call. That is not limiting you. Like, oh, it's not the campaign step. Yeah, I can't do it yet. Go for it. Like, make more calls. It's just there to make sure everyone's getting their follow-ups.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to break down kind of what your email outreach looks like. Now, I totally understand when you're breaking down your email outreach, it might be slightly different to say a recruiter that's recruiting in construction, or a tech recruiter, because that might be a little bit more candidate focused, for example, in comparison to what you're doing. So first and foremost, let's see if we can break down kind of the email aspect, and then we'll go on to like the calls and the other touch points. You mentioned there was like 9 steps, right? How many actual emails are there in there?
So just 2 emails.
There's just 2. Okay, that's very interesting. So what goes in those emails then, out of curiosity?
So yeah, I used to do more, but then I stopped doing so many. So I have a few different types of follow-ups that I try to use, but in my first one, pretty much they're all quite different. So sorry, the sun's blinding me. I'm just going to shift to the left. As in my first one, I'll start off with Charles, and then I'll say, I saw that, or I'll bring it straight to personalization. Same with my subject line. My subject line, I have no capital letters. It's 3 words, and it's going to be specific to them, their business, something that they posted, something that's going to make them open it. Half the battle's not getting in the spam, but then the other half is getting them to actually click and open it. So for me, I'm going to go in with like you probably you did actually post something about the Rec Expo. That's going to be in my subject line. That's going to be my first line of personalization, because if you imagine you're receiving that email, all you see is a subject line, and then you see like the first half sentence as your preview on your laptop or on your phone. So that's where I'm going to try and grab those people and try and get them to actually open it. That's what I'll link it into. And then I'll try and link that, if I can, into some sort of problem statement, something that I know is happening in the industry right now, something that I know that other people that we work with are struggling with, and saying, is that relevant? Do you have that? If so, let's jump on a call. This is how we're helping people. It's going to be really short. I'm not going to lie. My emails are quite short. Like, I don't really go into essays. I think with all of my cold outreach, all I'm trying to do is try and get like a nibble from someone. I'm not trying to sell on email. I'm not trying to sell on a LinkedIn video or a voice note. I'm trying to get them on the phone to book a meeting from there, basically.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's one of my top 3 pet peeves when I work with a recruiter and I look at their spec out emails, their e-shots, and I do this test. I go like that. People that are listening, I squint my eyes and I go, squint your eyes to the recruiter next to me. What do you see? And it's just a big like bunch of text. And I was like, if you were a big shot sales director or managing director, whatever it might be, and you got that email, be honest, would you read it? And most recruiters sit there and go, probably not. But, I wanted to give them a bit of an introduction to what we do as a business and why they should work with me. No one gives a fuck. No one cares on that first email. Also, they can just click on your LinkedIn profile and see what you do for a living. You don't need to have that in your email. So we did a bit of training. I can't remember who it was at Sourcewell, but we had someone from your business come in at my old company to help my team, the L&D team, to upskill so we could train people. And there was something, I can't remember what it was or why it was, but I just remember it being the F shape in terms of how to shape your emails. I mean, you're nodding there. Could you tell people that might be listening to that going, what that kind of is and why that's a thing that people do?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like the shape of a letter F, basically. So your first one is going to be your longest one. That's the personalization. That's the bit where you've read their profile, you know a bit about their company, maybe they've had some funding or you see a job advertised, something like that. That's when it's really, really specific to them. The next shorter bit is the potential pain point that they could be going through. And then the last little bit is the call to action, which is a whole other podcast, I'm sure, depending on what call to action you guys want to use. But just a quick question for you as well, because I have heard different things on this. Do you ever start an email, or what do you think when you see like, I hope you're doing well, or something polite at the beginning?
In the bin.
Hate it. Okay.
In the bin. I think it's just a waste of time. It's like, one of my other pet peeves is when I do call coaching with a recruiter and they do. So say, for example, if I'm cold calling you at Sourcewell and I go, hi, is that Emily? And then you go, yeah. And I'm like, oh, hi, Emily. It's Charles here calling from Infinite Learning. How are you doing today? And they go, yeah, I'm all right. You? Yeah, really good. Thank you. It's a lovely day outside. Look, what the fuck are we doing? It's a cold call. You've just wasted 20 seconds. They don't know who you are, where you're calling from, why you're calling. There's no substance to it. You sound uncertain, and the person who's most uncertain does not influence. What are we doing? So it's the same thing in an email when I sit there and I'm like, why have you put, I hope you're well? Oh, it's common courtesy. Yeah, maybe to the HR manager that you're currently working with, perhaps. Yeah, but if you're trying to entice someone, and like you said, a big eye opener is, if like, I get emails all the time, like help with your tax and help with your marketing. If the first line is I hope you're well, and that's all you can see when you look at your notification, what's the desire to want to open the email, right?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And as the account management part of my role, I do a lot of those campaign review sessions, as you mentioned. And everyone's like, oh, let's dig into my emails, let's rip them apart together. And I'm like, I can, but I can guarantee I know what they're going to start with. And when they do start with that, like if you want to wish someone well, maybe do it at the end. Be like, either way, hope you're all good, especially if you know them and you want to be like, just hope you're all good at the end. Either way, don't start it like that. Number one, spam. Spam is such a hot topic at the moment because of the new deliverability filters that are being put in. But that is one of the things they are literally looking out for, is wishing someone you're well. Yeah, it's less chance to click on it and more chance to go into spam.
Yeah, well, I think what you just said there, I mean, if because it is realistically, that's just a nice thing to do. It's like, when you do a cold call, like back in the day, I would be like, have I caught you in okay time? Because if you're brought up in the UK specifically, and largely other countries as well, you're brought up to not want to speak, or not tell your parents tell you don't speak to strangers and don't interrupt me when I'm busy. What do you do in sales and recruitment? You speak to strangers and interrupt them when they're busy. So it's a natural, like, human instinct to say, have I caught you at a bad time? And sorry for calling you because, like, we don't know each other type thing. So, you know, for me, you just, to stand out and stuff, you just need to be punchy. You just need to get to it. With existing clients, so say, for example, you've got a business that you've recruited for, whatever, and they've just reposted an advert or whatever, and you've got a great relationship. Hi, Emily. Hope all's well. Saw you've just posted an engineering role. Let's jump on a call. That's fine because you've already got the relationship. You don't need to work to win the business. You've already got it type thing. But for cold outreach, yeah, I'm with you, Emily. I'm just, it's annoying.
It is, isn't it? But yeah, it's an easy one to remove and it can make quite a lot of difference. But I think that's where people are nervous. So like, how do I start it then? Because that is like my natural go-to, and I would just say personalization.
Yeah. So let me unpack that with you. So whenever I sit down with consultants, their biggest, or the number one question I get from consultants when I do desk coaching with them is, oh, I've lost you for a second, the video.
I'm just shut my curtains. I'm not blinded. There you go.
I was like, oh no. Their biggest question, the number one question I get from consultants when I do desk coaching, when it's like, so the BD stuff that I do with people is largely call coaching, strategy before that, going through tools and techniques, and then obviously the email marketing, etc., alongside the cold calls.
It was.
They always say to me, Emily, how would I personalize? Like, what can I do to personalize? And I think when you're new, it's quite difficult because you and I can look at someone's profile and go, boom, there you go, Expo, there's my personalization. We know our market so well, so we know what pain points, so that would be the second thing. But for some consultants, it doesn't come quite naturally. And also in some markets, their clients and their candidates aren't necessarily as active on LinkedIn, which, as I know, we spoke about that at the Expo. So what advice have you got for recruiters, business owners that are struggling with that personalization piece?
Sure, for sure. I mean, I reach out to recruiters, and even some recruiters have the driest LinkedIn, and it's so hard to find something to go off of. But that's when you got to go that extra mile. I mean, if you have like a sales nav recruiter license, whatever, on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see, has their headcount changed recently? That's a really good one to trigger you to start reaching out to them. Something on their website. Some people have like an about section on their website. They will talk about their family and their dog. I don't know, something like that on there as well. There's quite a lot on websites usually to go off of. What else have I used? I
thought you were going to go
creative.
I thought you were going to go down the route of like Facebook stalking people.
No, that's too far. TikTok stalking people, I'm here for that, but not Facebook.
I done that one time, and I found out that the client never put that they were in the army before, and I Facebook stalked him and saw that he was in like the Royal Navy for like 20 years prior, and his LinkedIn was just national sales manager at this medtech company, and I Facebook stalked him because he was just like rejecting all my calls, and I just said like, my grandfather fought in World War II in the Royal Navy is like the subject line, and said like, basically someone said that they knew you if from the army, didn't say that I stalked them on Facebook, and he just immediately came back and was just like, oh, who was it that said that? And I was like, oh fuck. It turned out that the candidate I placed there also knew him from the army, so that was lucky. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend Facebook stalking, but it was adequate back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. One thing as well, like, you know, when you have mutual connections on LinkedIn, I find that doesn't work because people just connect with everyone, but an actual mutual friend would be amazing.
Yeah 100%. So for a recruiter then, on their email campaign, so we talked about like the format of the email and stuff. You're obviously sending 2 emails now. When I was the L&D manager, that business, they were IT recruitment, like tech recruitment. And one thing that the CEO said to me was that these guys are basically getting emailed every single day by recruiters, and we're very like candidate led. So if you've got a good candidate, you basically not spam them, but you need to be at the top of their inbox. So every single morning when they open their emails with their cup of coffee, they see Charles Kiriakou with a candidate, etc. So the email campaigns that they done were like 5+ stages. So it kind of, the cadence of it was like exactly what you said with the personalization problem, etc. Second one would be like, by the way, here's a candidate with like a bit of a write-up. The third one would be like, did you see the last email? Fourth one would be like, I've attached the CV. The write-up was in the final last email. Then it would be did you see the last email? Then it would be like, candidates off the market. Here's another candidate, or here's 2 candidates, different price range, different location, whatever. Final one, or second final one, did you see that email? With maybe some like humor. And then the final one was like the the killer one, which was like, look, you seem like a busy guy. You've not replied to any of the emails. I've tried to call and connect. Like, I'll leave it with you. You've got my details. You know what the candidates that we're working with, etc. And largely it worked, but that was kind of in a market where you could spec out to 100 people and get 50 jobs. Whereas now, I feel like so many recruiters are doing that. So it's kind of, they're not really standing out. But like, what's your thoughts on that sort of like cadence for a recruiter?
I think, yeah, if that works, keep doing what works. I would also say if you already have a relationship with that person, that's great. If they're like, oh, another message from Charles, he usually sends me some good candidates. Yeah, I'll have a look at this one.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. You're already going to their inbox. They know you. That's great. If you're doing cold business development, people take different approaches, right? Are you going to like spec candidates to them of jobs that you see they have open, or are you going to be more general, try and build that relationship, get a meeting, and then win roles that way? Because obviously not everyone advertises their roles. So I think that does work if, like you said, if you know them as well. But if you're going cold, I would take that more multi-channel approach as well.
Yeah.
So for example, you mentioned there pretty much every other email was going to be, did you see that email? Did you get much back from that one, or how did that email kind of look?
Sometimes, to be honest with you, it's so like varied, and I agree with you with the whole multi-channel approach. I think if you're just relying on that e-shot to 1,000 clients, like I said this to you at the expo, like the reply rate for a lot of consultants was like sub 5%. And it's because they weren't doing anything else. They were just relying on it. And again, I'm talking a lot about my pet peeves, but one of my biggest pet peeves is the client isn't even on the database, but they're in your Sourcewell campaign and you're not connected with them on LinkedIn. And then you're wondering why you're not getting an awful lot back. The client I had around my house to do the podcast today, his e-shot approach would be maximum 20 clients, send a candidate across, and the minute he sends that email, he dials immediately through all 20 people to say, hey, Emily, check your emails. And they're like, huh? Because it's relatively warm, so they kind of know who he is. They check the email and go, I've got a QS here that's absolutely unbelievable. Just come off of a meeting with them. And they're like, oh, wow. And that's how he sort of wins business. But yeah, to answer your question, it's difficult to really answer that because it's so different markets work differently. But I think it's just that little, did you see that email as a reminder? Because a lot of these, especially the tech markets where they're so busy, I'll go to that email a little bit later. That little follow-up email, people go, sorry, I've been really busy. Let's set up a call. So sometimes it does work. Yeah. For
sure. I even do that with my friends. I'm like, hey, do you want to go for dinner later? No response. Hey, are you around later? Oh yeah, sorry, didn't see that. Oh, I did see it, forgot to reply. Like everybody does it. I think there's a way, like I think they used to be called like bumper emails or like following up on the above. Like it can get kind of annoying. I think if you do it strategically, like following up with like first one's about the candidate, the next one it has the link to the CV or something, like following up with a bit of value rather than just kind of bumping it can be quite valuable as well. And the last point you mentioned, we call them like breakup emails. Is that the very last one? Like, look, I've tried to reach out to you, we've not come back. That's when the humor can kind of help as well, work a little bit.
I remember we did a breakup email with one consultant and they put a GIF in there of like Ryan Gosling going like that and just like putting his hand up to say goodbye. And it went down like a shit sandwich. It just did not go down well because at the time, like the business was just incentivizing their consultants to just mass spec out because that's how they were winning business. So in fairness, they were kind of just following the data. But what they didn't realize is long term, that strategy isn't very sustainable because you're going to piss off a lot of your market. And when we only hired rookies that were like 18, 19 years old, that are just spamming the living fuck out of the market with candidates that weren't even exactly great, and then sending a GIF being like, farewell, you've got my details. And clients will come back like, mate, you've just been annoying me for 2 weeks with these emails. Fuck off. So I think, like you said, as long as you're being strategic, and I think the key thing, and this comes up with anyone I speak to that has success off the back of like email marketing and stuff. If you're just specking out and being lazy with it and just putting 100 people in a Sourcewell or into your e-shot and then just click send and haven't spent any time to personalize it, you're essentially wasting your time, in my opinion.
I agree. And you don't understand their business. Like if someone reached out to me, not that I have any hiring power, about like with some candidates, I was like, you've not proven to me that you've done any research on our business, know what our potential pains are, know where we need help, know where we're doing well. Like how do you know this candidate's good? Like you don't know anything about me. Like prove that you know this business. However, to counteract that, one breakup email that actually I saw work really well was when I used to work with Lucy Obatelli, who works at My Sales Coach now. And it was a video link to Goodbye by the Beatles. And it was like, I'll leave it to George, Lenny and Ringo to sing us out. And she got amazing results with that. So
Really?
maybe it works in the right market.
Yeah. And that's a really good point you bring up as well, actually, because if you're sending those types of emails to companies that recruit temps in warehouses, probably won't really go down very well. If you're doing it in like, you know, the rec tech market, it probably would go down quite well, because a lot of the people that post in rec tech are posting memes and gifs and stuff like that. So I think you're right, it is largely quite industry specific. So we've got, I think you've given such a tremendous amount of value already in terms of the email marketing and stuff like that. Talk to me about your cold calling strategy then. So if I was a recruitment business and you've done your research, you've realized that I haven't got Sourcewell, I don't know what other tools you've got to see kind of what else is going on in my business, but how would you approach a cold call with me? We've never engaged with Sourcewell. I've never engaged with you. What would be your opener? What would be your strategy for the cold call?
Sure. So my opener, I would be like, I would just go in and just say your name. I don't say, hi, Charles. Like, oh, Charles, even if they're like, oh, this isn't actually Charles. And you're like, oh, never mind. But I go, Charles, Emily from Sourcewell calling here. Look, I appreciate we haven't actually spoken before, but have you got 2 minutes to explain why I chose to give you a call? And usually it gets me in the door. But that is how I start it. I have A/B tested a lot. I used to use... is now a bad time because of that, like reverse psychology. Everyone likes to say no.
Can I just pause you there? Sorry. I used to do the, have I caught you at a good time? And every single time a client would sit there and go, actually, no, it's not a great time. And I didn't realize about the reverse psychology. I think I'd done it and then it kind of clocked that, oh shit, this actually really, really works, because the permission-based openers, like a lot of people do use them now. And when I've done them, they work, but I've had a lot of clients answer the phone and I said, oh, do you mind if I take 30 seconds to explain why I've called? Promise you it's a well-researched call. They go, get the fuck on with it. Like, because they've just heard that from so many different people. But now kind of what I've done is I do my opener and I really try and name drop people. So if I called you, I'd say like, you know, I met Dougie quite a few times. He helped me out when I first set my business up and he's recommended I give you a call. And then you go, oh yeah, Dougie's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sorry, Emily, I didn't actually ask. And I just try and be a bit courteous. And I say, if I call you the worst possible time ever, and they always go, no, it's not the worst time. It's like, okay, well, look, we'll be brief. And then boom, you get into it, you get your info, and then you just try and close for time to actually dedicate to get the information you need, a meeting, face-to-face or Zoom or whatever. I just thought I'd just throw that in there because what you just said, I'm like, sometimes when I have people on the podcast that say something that I'm utilizing and training people on, I'm like, yes, another voice to echo what's actually working.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it comes back to that, like, using your data to A/B test what is working, what is getting you the best response with your personality in your market, in your geography. Like when we're all in the office doing cold calls together, like you hear everyone try like a variety of things, and after a while people really find what works, what allows them to keep talking. It's quite funny when someone tries like a really outlandish one. Like I follow an Australian TikToker who does cold outreach for his like marketing company, and I think Australians just get away with being really funny and cheeky and stuff. So he has some great ones, but I'm like, I could never pull those
Have you got
off.
an example of something weird and wacky he's done?
He's just like, oh, if I told you it was a cold call, would you want to like throw your phone out the window, or just like someone's like, yeah, not bad, how are you? Yeah, like I'm making the world turn, I've been amazing, or I don't know, he just says some crazy stuff.
Yeah, fair. That I like weird and wacky things, but sometimes I just sit there and like I've thought about the whole would you throw your phone out the window and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like if it's not deeply authentic to yourself or like almost quite natural, because I think the permission-based opener you've given us is just like, it just cuts to the point in all honesty, and it's just like just demonstrating that you've done a bit of research. Like, can I just have a couple of minutes to explain why I've called, and then like just getting to it. So once you've done that opener, do you have like a set of questions that you have, like non-negotiable questions that you try and ask? Tell me about the kind of question, because for me, like I always say to consultants when I train them, like recruitment from start to finish, all it is questions. Like cold call, finish with a question, closing the call, question. Everything is all about questions. So if you can master that, you'll be half decent in sales and recruitment. So what sort of questions do you typically try and get out on a cold call?
For sure, like I'm exactly the same. I want them to be talking. I want me to be talking as less as possible and help help them basically. So yeah, I have my previous emails that I've sent them. I've got my like company insights. I've got that personalization that I would have said to them on the email. So I'll be like, look, I've done some research on you guys. I can see that XYZ, whatever that pain point is that I've said on the email, said on my LinkedIn message, whatever. And then I'll say, look, I speak to a lot of recruiters like yourself in the X market, again, making it relevant to them, and say, well, they're often doing well. They have a couple of gaps, and that actually is costing them a fair bit of revenue. And then I go into 2 potential pain points that we're seeing a lot in the market. So consultants aren't following up enough sorry, let me start that again. See, I'm doing it under pressure now and it's all going wrong. Firstly, is that consultants aren't calling or following up enough, and they don't have a standard process to follow. Or secondly, they're spending hours manually updating the CRM each week, or in some cases, not updating it at all. Do either of those sound familiar for you? And let them just take the floor. Sometimes it's no, none of them familiar, everything's perfect. Then you go, oh, what's your secret? But yeah, usually it's one of those 2 things.
Yeah. And in what you do, I can imagine the objections you might come across will probably be quite similar to a lot of recruiters that listen to this. What would you say is like the standard objection you get when you're doing your cold outreach on the phone?
I have I call them like shorter objections and longer objections. So shorter is just like, look, I don't have time, I'm going into a meeting. That's not an objection, like, we'll get back in touch. I get a lot of those. The longer ones are probably like, budget, overwhelmed by tech. We've got other priorities that we're looking at right now. Things like that is mainly it. But also not understanding what it is that Sourcewell is, because it's a new concept. It's not a CRM, it's not just a dialer, it's not one particular thing. It's like trying to convey that on a cold call when someone might not have heard of it at all. And I know my selfish aim is to get them on a demo so I can run them through it on a Zoom, but honestly that's the easiest way in the tech market to show someone what you're trying to do. But that's, I'd say for me, that's what I get the most. And then obviously the ones that transfer more to recruitment is usually like budget or things like that, timing, budget.
But budget, timing, and in recruitment we're not hiring. And that's the one that for whatever reason recruiters get hung up on is I've done call coaching with consultants lately where they get off the call and I'm like, I'm talking a lot about my pet peeves here. One of my other pet peeves is people that rush to get off the call. Like, I said this to a consultant yesterday, until the client says, mate, I do not have time, I need to go, or fuck off, do not get off the phone, keep asking questions. As long as you're being courteous and you've got a curious tone and stuff, like you're not being rude and like super like being like an interrogation. But yeah, like the one that they get a lot is, we're not currently hiring, and the recruiter will go, oh, well, I've got this really, really good candidate. They're like, we're not hiring. And then recruiters get off the phone and go, they're not hiring, so I can't get over that. And I'm like, did you ask them why they're not hiring? And they're like, no, I wouldn't think to ask that question. Did you ask when they're going to hire again? No. Did you ask where else in the business they could hire? Again, all I'm doing is I'm listing off the start of every type of open question and asking it about that. And then lo and behold, what typically happens when you're asking those questions, the person will sit there and go, we're not hiring at the minute because we're on a hiring freeze. Why? Because we don't have budget. Why? Because we just spent 30 grand on recruitment in Q1 and everyone's just recently started. When did their probation finish? Their probation finishes in start of Q2. Okay, and how confident are you that all of those candidates are going to stay put? Fairly confident. What's your retention rate like, just out of curiosity? It's pretty decent. You mirror and they go, oh yeah, I mean, well, we've had some people, but sometimes they last like 5-6 months and we get rid of them. Okay, cool. If I had a candidate, what type of person would you be interested in seeing? Even if you don't have budget, what's someone that you'd just like to see land in your inbox, or get on a call with me to go, I'd like to see that profile. Well, if you've got this type of person, and all of a sudden you've gone from, we're not hiring, fuck off, to you've just gathered shit tons of information. And guess what? You do your follow-ups, exactly what you've been saying, Emily, and then a couple of months later, who knows, one of the candidates might have left, one of them might have been sacked, one of them might, all of a sudden they've just got investment, they've just been acquired, they've got budget, and you've already built trust. You're doing the stuff in the background on the personal branding stuff, you're firing across some candidates. And this is what I say to people all the time, you're doing that. Most recruiters aren't. Most recruiters finish the call at, oh, they're not hiring, and then they'll call in 6 months. If you've been doing all that legwork up to that next 6 months, there's a perfect chance to go exclusive with that client. just me again. If you are not subscribed on YouTube or following us on Apple, Spotify, the newsletter on LinkedIn, myself on LinkedIn, then what the hell are you doing? You're going to miss out on all the great content that we're putting out. I'm also looking at doing a live event in Q2, and I need some support, I need some help, I need some ideas. So if you've got this far into the episode, please drop me a message on LinkedIn with some ideas of who you think should be on the panel, what topics we should discuss, and all that kind of good stuff. Also, the only way I fund this podcast is through my own business, coaching. One-to-one coaching is the kind of thing that I'm doing almost exclusively in the next 3 months. So if you're a recruiter or if you're a founder of a business and you see that there's a recruiter in your company that you know can go from good to great, future leader, go from 120k to 250, 250 to 500k, 500k to 1 million, put them in touch with me. Get in touch with me. I'm taking on 10 recruiters. I've got 5 spots left when this episode comes out. Get in touch. Like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Let's get back to the episode.
Solved it. That was full flow. I love that.
I only get a tiny bit passionate on the podcast.
Process. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's so important. And that's one thing that has been a game changer for me is, like I said, I'm trying to get a nibble when I'm doing my outreach. That's all I want. Even if someone replies saying, not right now, not interested, not the right time. That's when you pick up the phone. That's when you have their number in their email signature. No one's ever annoyed when I do that. I'm like, oh, I just got your email back. Keen to just hear a little bit more around that, or like, when is the hiring freeze going to be lifted, or when are you looking at new tech, when is it, like, that's when you have your like meatiness you can go after and then put follow-ups in for. If you're just like, oh, another no, anyway, next, no, they're still, you've fought hard to get a response from them. That is your opportunity.
Yeah. Do you know what I was saying to my client in the office yesterday, that when I was like my first job in the city, we was like in a dingy basement in King's Cross. And because recruitment and sales is savage, right? Because you're being told to F off and you've got clients dicking you about, and it's a rough job, but the highs are extremely high, the lows can be extremely low. And I was always that person that if a client replied to my email, I would jump up and go, yes, Emily's replied to my email. Yes, she's got a number. Dial. Voicemail, right? Double dial. Emily, hey, it's Charles here, like that. And I'd be so excited. And people are like, mate, it's just a reply to an email. And I'm like, yeah, but the thing is like those replies to those emails, those answers on the phone, they go, oh, thank you for being proactive. We're not hiring, but that I've just gathered 2 bits of info. They like stack on top of each other. And imagine you get like 20 replies to your emails, 5 decent conversations, you book a couple of meetings. Yeah, you haven't put money on the board yet, but those are all things that stack up towards the actual monetary thing at the end. And like, if you don't celebrate those wins, it just you'll basically not want to get on the phone because you'll be fucking depressed all the time.
Exactly. That's one of the, like, not a set KPI, but the thing that I look at for myself is my reply rate. Even if that is a little bit different to my meeting booked rate, there's still replies. They're people that I'm going to follow up with for sure. And also, people are kind of keyboard warriors. If they come back with you with like kind of not a mean reply, just like, oh, like, I'm not interested. You pick up the phone and they're so nice. They're always so nice. They're always willing to have a conversation. It's just like, oh, not interested. It's because they're busy. They're busy. They don't want any more like stuff coming to their inbox. So yeah, I think and that's something I probably didn't do for the first like 6 to 8 months, just because I was like, oh, they said no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But it's so worth doing.
Yeah, 100%. I've asked this question to a few people, and I've got quite a varied response, and we'll move on to the next topic in a second, which is large. It's actually weirdly about what I'm going to ask about. There's a lot of recruiters that are some experienced and some that are quite new that are, I don't want to use the word afraid of picking up the phone, but they're hesitant. And like what you just said there, if you've got a client that says, hi, thanks for email, not interested at this moment, and there's a number, most recruiters will see that and go, they're not interested, so I'm not going to call them. Why do you think there are so many recruiters that are hesitant to pick up the phone just in general?
It's just that fear of rejection, isn't it? I definitely had it. Like, I only started cold calling like 3 years ago, and it's just scary. I'm like, I know I want to do sales. I know I want to be in the recruitment market. Like, that's what, like, I just know, but still, you see okay, I have to make 50 calls today. You do a little deep breath, and it's just scary because if you're just worried that no one ever is really, sometimes, that is someone's just going to like full on reject you, but you've just got to think, right, well, that's fine. I'll try and do disco anyway where I can, and I'll move on to the next one. Like it is going to be okay. It's just that gut feeling of like, oh my God, they're going to reject me. This is so awkward.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, once you practice it, it is fine.
Yeah, it is. And I remember my old manager always used to say, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can't punch you down the end of the phone. Like, they'll hang up on you. And the thing is as well, I said this to a recruiter the other day, person hung up on him, and I was like, call back, and his eyes just like, huh? I was like, call him back. Just say, like, you know, and his manager turned around and was like, mate, if someone hangs up on you, call him back and say, hi, mate, sorry, phone line cut off. Anyway, reason for the call, and just go straight back into it. But I think you're so right. It is that fear of rejection. And I think looking back at my career and looking back at some of the consultants that I've worked with that had that fear of rejection, but let that kind of, you know, overwhelm them almost, so that there was large blocks of them just not doing any cold calls. Quite a few people on the podcast, when I've asked that question, have said largely it's almost down to people not getting out of their comfort zone enough. And if your job in itself is like what I do, I sometimes have to cold call people. It is a little bit uncomfortable, but I just do it anyway. So I always say to recruiters, like, I don't like the term homework because I hate school, but like I say to people outside of work, go and just do something that is uncomfortable. Like if you go to the gym, but you're the person that just goes and sits on the yoga mat and, you know, like I used to just go to the gym in the corner with a kettlebell, and that was it, because I was terrified of the weights room. Now I go 3 days a week, and there are times where you compare yourself to others, and like, you know, I don't want to do deadlifts today, I'm really sore, but then you do it and you push through, and then you come home and you're like, and I'm talking about, you know, stacking up those little mini wins and like that, building that grit and that resilience, so that when you do pick up the phone to a managing director of a recruitment firm or whatever, and they do turn around, which largely they don't, but imagine they come back and say, fuck off, I've had too many of these calls. Do you know what? It's fine, because I've just done something way fucking harder earlier. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. And look, it is never nice, like, when someone isn't the nicest to you on the phone, but that's fine. And it's such a typical thing to say, but they've probably just had a bad day. They're not taking it out on you. Especially in my market, reaching out to recruiters, they have to cold call themselves. That's why they probably give me more of the time of day. But there will be some that are rude to you, but like, just push it down and like carry on. Like, if you let it affect you, that's only going to like hurt yourself. Like, their day is going to go on the same. Everyone else's day is going to go on the same. And it's probably a lot easier said than done, right? Because I've definitely felt a bit rubbish coming off of calls before, but you just got to move on. And then when you do start converting, making placements, seeing that money come in, it's all worth it. And you're like, it was so worth those no's.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that's what, like, I'm very fortunate that when I was first getting into recruitment, work from home wasn't a thing. We didn't have laptops. It was like, you know, we had desktop computers. You're in the office 5 days a week. And although I don't think I could ever do that ever again, what I was really grateful for with that is that if I had a really bad call, like one of my best friends that I used to work with, a girl called Catherine, she's like just so positive all the time. So I'd have a call and I'd get off, and she could see that I was visibly like, oh, like that. And she'd just come over, give you a little cuddle and be like, mate, you asked some really good questions. Some people are a dick. It's fine. But guess what? You'll call him in 2 months' time and he might not be a dick. It's fine. Crack on. And then you get on with it and you're like, oh, do you know what? Yeah, it's fine. Like doing it at home alone by myself, and I don't have any colleagues. If I have a bad call, I'm just like, oh God, like it takes a little bit longer for me to sort of lift myself up. But with the experience, you kind of like can just pull yourself out of that weird zone of like feeling the rejection and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I never really thought of it like that, doing it from home versus in the office. I mean, yeah, you're probably right. When we do like power hours together, where we make the coldies together, we're on a Zoom call, and you still have that kind of team mentality, because you can kind of, everyone's on mute, but you watch each other do the calls in a way, and you can use that little Zoom chat of like, oh, just had this happen, or yeah, you booked one, or got a call back later. It's that kind of team mentality, I guess. It does help more than I probably realized.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because when I worked remotely during COVID, we just literally bought a bunch of laptops the minute we were told we were going to go into lockdown. We never really did Teams calls internally and all the rest of it. And my performance just fell like rock bottom, basically. I was living at home with my mum, and just like the pandemic was so overwhelming and it was really, really difficult. I lost like all my clients, all my live jobs, 19 across my team. All went dormant besides one, and I did like I was billing consistently like 200 grand a year while managing a team, and then I just billed 40k in 2020. So it was like really, really, really tough time. And I remember the MD was like, oh, we should all jump on Teams so that we can all like see each other working. And I just, that when he explained that to me in the way he did, we were like, whoa, because it kind of like when your boss says that, it's like, oh, you just want to spy on us, don't you? But the way that you've kind of done that across like the team, I feel like that could be quite an interesting, because a lot of businesses do work remotely, and then when consultants work remotely, they don't do as many PD calls, so that could be quite an interesting idea.
Yeah, I always feel like working from home versus the office is quite a controversial topic, especially in recruitment.
Mm,
Like for me, I live quite close to our office. I like to go in. It's just like a 10-minute cycle for me. But I know people work from all over the place and can be really successful working all over the place. It's just
mm.
where you feel like you thrive in your environment. And one of the things that I feel like you just don't get working from home is like being nosy and listening to other people's conversations and little things that they do on the call, that which I now do on my calls. Those things are quite hard to replace, I feel.
Yeah, I remember my first ever job. I was only there for like 4 or 5 months when I was apprentice. Social care recruitment. It's just wasn't for me. I didn't really like the market. You weren't really actually allowed to speak to hiring managers. It all went through like government like frameworks and portals. It was shit. But I remember one of the first things the director ever said to me when I made my first ever cold call. Because naturally I've got quite good tonality. Like my mum's Greek Cypriot, so she's very animated and very passionate when she speaks. So that kind of brought that into recruitment. And then I was struggling a little bit with like what questions to ask and, how to be a little bit more commercial with these clients. And the director just put her arm around me and was like, right, look around the room. And whilst you're like dialing, I want you to just have your headphones, like one ear open. And I want you to listen to how other people sound and just note what Joe Bloggs does, Sue Smith does, and then just take those things and then just bring it into you and make it your own. And I've always, and that was like 11 years ago, I've always remembered that. And whenever I go into recruitment businesses now, where largely they're in the office, say 2-3 days a week minimum, I'm like, mate, like listen to other people, how they do it. Don't copy them because then you sound inauthentic. But if Emily's done that permission-based open, it works for her, try that. And if it's not working, shift your tone, etc., etc. If Emily's done this to deal with that objection, or she's asked that question, add that to your arsenal and then utilize that. And I know, like you said, it is a bit of a controversial topic, the whole work from home thing. But like, if I was a training consultant, if I went back 11 years, if I was 20 right now, going into the recruitment industry, I would want to work in the office as much as I possibly could. Being 31-year-old now with baby on the way, house and stuff, I don't want to be commuting into London 5 days a week and then sitting on the fucking crowded tube and stuff like that. I've been there, I've done that, and I'm at a level now where I'm good at what I do. But if I was a complete rookie and I could be around people like yourself and other people I know, I would want to be amongst it as much as I possibly can.
For sure. Yeah, me too. And now I guess it's almost taking it to different Facebook, TikTok and stuff, because for some reason I post my cold calls on there and I listen to other people's cold calls. That's where I get tips from as well. So it's still kind of virtual. There's other ways you can kind of get that information.
Yeah. Again, that's another interesting point, actually. There's so, when did you get into sales?
I did an internship for Intel back in 2019 going to 2020 because COVID was right in the middle of that. Yeah. And then I went back to university, thought I really, really liked sales and stuff. It's a lot easier when you have a big multinational company behind you when you can just say the name. And then, I went back and was a business analyst for them, and then got contacted by a recruiter, Timber Seed, and then got the job at Sourcewell to be an SDR.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I don't know where I was going to go with that. What was I going to say? Oh, it's kind of skipped my mind now. Oh, fuck it. It might come back to me. I was going to ask you that for a specific reason about when you first got into sales, but don't worry, it will come back to me. We spoke a lot about being on the phone. You said to me one of the things you want to speak about is being quite strict with your time, and you seem like somebody that's like very process orientated, like, very organized in what you do, which is great. So you said about like spending, like, just talk me through like the whole spending more time on the phone, allocate, like, automating certain activities. Just break that down for me.
Sure. I feel like you only have a certain amount of hours, working hours, where you need to be doing the most revenue generating tasks that you can. If you're doing something that you're like, oh, I have to do this, it's like an admin, it's very manual, I don't really want to do it, and you're not putting any like of your input in there, it probably can be automated. There's a lot of tech out there at the moment, like a lot. And someone's probably found a way to automate that for you. And if it's done well and that works for you, it's going to be worth that investment, because I think as a recruiter, as a salesperson, if you should be showing your personality, doing only what a human can do. Like you saw it at the expo, right? AI is like everywhere at the moment. There's a lot of things that AI can do, but there's a lot of things AI can't do. And I think you should be spending your time And you're doing a disservice if you're not doing this, spending your time doing only what a human can do.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, it's come back to me. I had a brain fart at the expo, and it happened again on this podcast. Fuck's sake. Where I was asking about when you got into sales, the reason why I asked you that was because when I first got into recruitment, our L&D was like DVDs and VHSs. I'm not even that old. It's mental. We didn't have recruitment podcasts. We didn't have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and stuff. There was no fucking recruitment and sales content really on there. Like I remember looking at YouTube 3 years ago and like searching up what's the best way to deal with objections in recruitment and stuff. And there wasn't that much. Whereas now there are so many wicked podcasts. There's so much content. Like I go on TikTok now and I only use it for business. So I don't follow any meme pages or anything like the occasional work meme because it's relatable, but like, it's like really like value adding content. So I think people coming into the industry now, and you are working from home, quite rightly, like what you said, you can still learn from other people, you know, on your lunch break through TikTok and stuff like that. So yeah, I totally agree. Just lastly on the thing that you said about automation, I was listening to it was a comedy podcast last night whilst I was waiting for my podcast and stuff to export, and they had Mark Cuban or whatever his name is, a billionaire, on the podcast, and he was talking about this this new bit of AI software where it essentially creates podcasts for you. It's fucking weird, right? So basically, let's say, for example, I search in, make me a podcast on how to create email outreach, how to master cold calls. And I want it to be in the style of a mixture between like Recruitment Mentors podcast and the 1% Better Recruitment podcast. And I want it to sound like a man and a woman talking. And then you put that in the AI and it will give you a 30-minute podcast with two bots talking to each other. And they will literally talk to each other and go, Emily, how are you? Yeah, I'm good. So let's get into it. Let's talk about cold calling techniques. What's your attempt? This is how mine would look. And then it goes through and gives you all that type of stuff. And obviously the hosts of the podcast were like, no one wants to listen to a fucking podcast with two AI robots chatting shit to each other like that. But then the way Mark explained it was that what that is it's like almost a replacement for, you know, when you go out and you're like, right, I want to buy a book on negotiation. When I buy Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. Well, actually, I can use this bit of software and say, I can't be asked to read the entire book. Can you give me a summary on that book in a podcast format? And also, can you make it more towards cold calling? And then it will give you a 30-minute podcast all about how to negotiate and some key things from that book. That just fucking blows my mind.
That does sound crazy, actually.
And it's only going to get better. That's what's scary about it. My question to you, though, would be, what automation tools are you currently using at the moment?
Sourcewell.
There's the plug.
Well, I'm very fortunate to work at a company where I get to use the tech. It's like Inception, you know, I'm in it, I'm using it, talking about it every day, helping people use it. So for example, when I work with people who don't use it, I see like their calendar full up of reminders. And it's so messy. Manually saying to themselves, go and do a follow-up. We do a lot of automation on our CRM. We use HubSpot. My boss, Josh, is really, really good at being like, Emily, what are you spending time on? Right, okay, I'm going to speak to IT. We're going to automate this. We'll find a way to make your life easier. Nice. So kind of like finding out where you're spending those like 10 minutes a day, which are really going to add up. Got a dialer, really, really recommend. Anyone doesn't have one of those. That saves me so much time. What else do we use? Probably things that are so ingrained in my everyday that I literally don't even notice.
What does the dialer look like then? Because I can't remember how this popped up in conversation the other day. We were talking about like these dialers, and my understanding of it is it kind of just, you've got like a list and it will just dial, and the first person to answer, they answer, and the rest hang up. Is that kind of how it works?
That's a power dialer. So you can get like just a standard VoIP system, or you can get a power dialer. I've not used a power dialer just because everyone that I'm reaching out to, I've done the research. I know them. Well, I don't know them yet, but I'm going to know them. And I like to just like prep myself a little bit of just reminding myself rather than just calling through until a stranger answers. But you can do that if you just want to like have more conversations, or even like maybe like contact or something like that. Or like a normal VoIP system is basically calling through a headset rather than picking up your phone, typing things in.
Oh, okay. So what do you use? Because I've used Ring Over, Device, and Cloud Call.
You're not going to like my answer, but I use a Sourcewell dialer.
I didn't even realize Sourcewell have a dialer, to be fair. When did that get implemented?
About a year ago. So I've been using it
Okay.
in beta mode for a long time.
Right.
But yeah, it does like transcriptions, recordings, AI
Oh,
summaries, all
cool.
that kind of jazz.
Damn. So the whole platform has evolved so much since I first used it like 3+ years ago. So yeah, that's no, I was going to say, because when you said about the dialer, I just immediately thought power dialer, and I thought I can't see you using a power dialer with how like, detail orientated you are. Because I've had quite a few calls from like rec tech businesses. I won't like tell them because they'll say who they are, because they were terrible, terrible cold calls where they answer the phone and literally like, oh yeah, how are the team getting on? I'm like, the team. And like, yeah. And like, I seem like your business is growing. I was like, it's just me, mate. What are we talking about? They're like, oh, was it? So what are your plans for growth? When are you looking to hire? I was like, do you think you're speaking to a recruitment business? It was like, yeah. And I'm like, mate, please just look at my profile before you call me, man. It's embarrassing. It's actually embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Kind of like taints the brand a little bit as well. It's reached out to you. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, last topic I wanted to pick your brains about, because as you know, like, I'm massive on LinkedIn, and I think I don't know if it was a post that you done yesterday or something we spoke about, sometimes your mates might take the piss at the pub and all the rest of it. But like, I remember when I first set my TikTok up, and, when I first set the podcast up, and my friends were like, oh, I'm a podcaster. Oh, I'm Joe Rogan. And I was just like, all right, mate. All right. And then I got my first client after a couple of weeks and I invoiced them a decent amount for that month. And that's paid for the podcast for like 3 years. And then they were like, oh, wait, you're earning money off the podcast. Like, because they just think the podcast or TikTok is the only way you're going to make money is through like sponsors and like, the being monetized on those platforms. It's not really what it is. It's about getting the customers back to you and stuff. But how did what made you start on the TikTok thing? Because there's not many people that do that in the recruitment rec tech space. What made you start that?
Sure. So when I first started, everything was quite new to me, and I was doing okay. I was getting a little bit better every day, learning, occasionally hitting my target, not all the time. But I'm sure for like you and people that you work with, that isn't good enough. I want to be
Mm,
hitting or exceeding each
yeah.
month. I don't want to be like, will I hit it this month? No, not good enough. So then I was kind of like, right, what can I do to kind of change this and really up my game here? Of course, I can get a little bit better every day. I can do like trainings and things, which is great. But, I'm an impatient person sometimes. And then I was on TikTok, and like you, I follow like recruiters. Well, there wasn't loads of recruiters back then, but like salespeople on it. And there's someone, Sarah from Pareto, who was saying she has all the like leads and like how much she smashed her targets because of all the inbound stuff she was getting from TikTok. And I was just thinking like, wow, I wish that would probably,
Mm,
if I could do that, that would be amazing. But obviously you have that self-doubt, not feeling confident, your friends seeing the account taking the mickey out of you. It just feels like the worst thing
mhm.
in the world. But then it was like a really low summer month, and I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to be. So I thought I'd just start posting. So made an account, called it Recruitment Secrets, did some cold calling, talked a little bit about the company I work for, did like relatable recruitment stuff, just trying to get into like recruiters' algorithms,
Mm,
and thinking that, there'll be some Gen Z consultants. Hopefully they'll hear the name, the word will kind of like
yeah.
warm up basically as I go. But there's a lot of people on TikTok you don't realize are on TikTok. So of course it took a while to be consistent, learn the algorithm, what works for me, what gets me in front of the right people. That was a whole learning process. But once I had got that and I was getting engagement, reaching out to people who also had TikTok accounts, then I started to like see like a huge change in my meetings booked. Not only just from relying on that inbound funnel that was
Mm,
coming, but also when I did my outbound, when people recognized me, oh my gosh, those cold calls, well, not even cold
they're
anymore,
not cold. Yeah.
so much easier, so much. And they genuinely feel like they know you. And I guess they kind of do, but it's really weird when you don't really know them.
Yeah.
But the ability to have a conversation is so much more open, so much more free flowing. And that
Mm,
I feel like is the real benefit, because not everyone's going to reach out to you just because they've seen you. But I had a couple people like at the expo that had recognized me, or when I'm doing like my cold outreach, that's when they recognize you, and it makes it so much easier.
yeah, that's exactly what I used to say to people when I was one of the first few people in my old business to start posting videos on LinkedIn, and at that point you didn't really see very many recruiters post videos. So I started off doing 60-second job adverts. So rather than being like hot job of the week with like the text format, and obviously I'm quite like an animated and passionate guy, so I just literally get the marketing manager to get a camera and then just be like, I've just got off the phone from Emily, she works for this business and they're looking for the salesperson in the Southeast. If you want to pay your mortgage off in 3 years, I've got the job for you, get in touch. And then it started to evolve into slightly more humorous and then sometimes controversial videos, and then I'd have candidates come in the office and I'd be like, I'm joined here with Emily's been made redundant, a business got bought out, she's looking for a new job, don't take it from me, Emily, why should people hire you? And then like the candidate would sit there and say 5 years, blah, 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 all the rest of it. Then I started doing videos with retained clients. So I'd get them to come into the office and sit there and say, I'm sat here with my client who is doing a team build in the UK. But rather than hearing it from the recruiter, why don't you just hear from it from the hiring manager herself? She's joined me today. And then I'd just pan the camera over and the hiring manager would stand up and go, right, so I've been in the industry this amount of time. If you want to work with me, this is what I'll offer you. And this is what we offer, you know, in terms of package. And I would just send that video in an email and say, and like the subject line would be like her name was Annabelle. I was like, listen to Annabelle. And then the body of the email would be like, most recruiters would send you a job, but none would ever send you what the hiring manager would say about the role. See the video, get back to me when you can. And like the reply rate was like 80% reply rate because no one had ever done that before. And obviously at the time, like you said, people were just like making jokes. You'd go to an exhibition and people would be taking selfies with you. And you're like, this is odd. This is fucking odd. And like people be taking the piss, just like, oh, you're a fucking celebrity and all the rest of it. You're like, not really. But it's just like every single call you make after that, even if you're not necessarily pulling clients off the back of your content. Like I don't really get many clients immediately DMing me for coaching services, training services, but they'll constantly like my stuff or they'll see it. And then I'll just DM them saying, really appreciate you connecting. Can I help with anything? And they go, oh, I love the podcast. Let's jump on a call. And then you jump on a call. And like you said, it's so weird because you've never seen a video of them. You've just got their LinkedIn profile and they've been watching you on TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever. And it's like, they just know you. So that for me is like the big thing where I say to recruiters, invest in the personal branding because you won't have to make cold calls. All of the calls will be just so much warmer. It just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, for sure. I can see why I get along with Dougie so well with all the video content stuff as well. Yeah, honestly, I think it's like there's such a video content boom at the moment. Like I was looking at some stats about how much more you get, like 5 times more engagement if it's a video. People will absorb it, they'll remember it. And look, in the age of AI, this is one way you can show your personality. I know there's AI videos out there, but they're creepy and I don't like them. This is the one way you can get your personality across. And you know what? It's free. You probably already have a smartphone. You probably already have a LinkedIn account. TikTok's free to get. Any other video platform, stream it, whatever you want to do. It's free as well, which is, you know, great.
100%. If you were a recruiter, so let's just say in a hypothetical universe, you and I set up a recruitment business and we were recruiting tech, sales, account managers, etc. And we were going to put together like a social media strategy and go, right, we're going to do minimum 3 videos or 3 posts per week. Just stay on LinkedIn because most consultants, their LinkedIn is going to be their main thing. What would be your like 3 bits of content that you'd post on LinkedIn each week if you were a recruiter?
So I actually have this, I called it like a non-overwhelming posting plan, which I did it on the expo. It's, if someone messaged me, I can just give it to you. But basically it's have your targets of what you want. So as a recruiter, talent attraction. So you want people to work for you, Talent attraction, you want people to work for you. Candidate attraction and client attraction. Those are the 3 things I would focus on. And look, whatever state your business is in, you're going to be focusing on one more than the other. Maybe you're going to go a month focus on one. But if you're just starting and you want to have that strategy, I would do, 2-3 videos a week, one of each of those focus. Once you post them on TikTok, save them, repost them on LinkedIn. You know, you've doubled your work and you've not actually had to do anything. So I would say focus on those 3 things. So do 1 video of those and then just keep going and start A/B testing which strategy is working for you, what video is getting you not only the most views, but the most engagement with the people that you want to engage with, like your ICP. That's what you're aiming for. And be consistent.
That's the hardest thing though, isn't it? Is being consistent. Like when I first set this podcast up, someone said to me, don't look at your analytics for the first year. And I was like, huh? They're like, you'll get depressed if you look at your analytics because most people, they see like, oh, yet another person setting up a podcast, yet another person trying to post on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. Most people give up after a few months. To be fair, like hands up, I gave up with TikTok because at that moment in my life, it was way too much on top of everything else I had to do just by myself. But with the podcast, I set myself a goal and I was like, right, minimum for myself was to get to 30 episodes, because the minute you get to 30, you're in the top 1% of all podcasts, because most of them don't make it past 20.
Whoa.
I think 80% of podcasts don't make it past 20 episodes, and like 90% of podcasts don't make it, 90+% don't make it past 30. And it's just that rhythm. And like the first few episodes are, brand new podcast, your network is like, oh, congrats, we'll give it a listen. And then after the next few, it's just like, yeah, it's another podcast, all the rest of it. And then you do get those moments where you're sat there, you're looking at the views and you're going, this is actually pretty fucking, there's a lot of work we're putting into doing this video content, and we're not getting an awful lot of return yet. And then you have a cold call with a client, which isn't cold because they know you, and they go, yeah, come in the office, meet the owner, and yeah, we'll talk. Oh, it's just paid off for itself. And you go, right, okay. So your advice there about staying consistent is just, yeah, that's mega.
Yeah, I think it's the same journey for everyone. The first couple of months, like you probably won't get anything. I got like one comment, I remember after the first like 5 videos, and it was like, oh, Sourcewell, or like, what CRM is that? Well, we're not actually a CRM, but it was a bit of engagement. The harder thing about TikTok is that you can't actually see that person's profile, what company they work at. They're a bit more anonymous. Yeah. But that's where the link comes in with LinkedIn, where it's like, oh, they're connecting with me on LinkedIn because they've seen me on TikTok, which took me a long time to figure out. That's why I was getting connection requests.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, look, Emily, I appreciate you taking the time today. I don't want to take up any more of your time on this lovely Friday. But as you know, I finish every episode with the same question. And you said to me before that you've got a killer answer, and I kind of know what you're going to say. I maybe slightly forgot, but I do remember it was amazing. But after every episode, or after this episode, sorry, how can viewers and listeners get 1% better in recruitment?
Picking up the phone. It probably is quite an annoying one to say, and I know a lot of people say it, but genuinely, everything that we've spoken about today, personal brand, emails, making the right sequence, campaign, all of that aids your conversation you're going to have on the phone. It's going to make it easier. If you're not actually picking up the phone, if you're just doing everything else, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, because when you do pick up the phone, you've built so much of a platform for yourself. That call is going to be so much easier.
Preach. Absolutely love it. You reminded me, you gave me a flashback. My first job in London, when we worked in King's Cross, we had some weird, obscure phone that was a dog and bone, which is like Cockney rhyming slang for phone, right? Pick up the dog and bone. And whenever it was quiet, the MD would walk over to you, and it was a big, chunky looking thing, like an English bulldog, and the phone was like the bone, and he would put it on your desk and just go, get on the dog and bone.
That's when I cry and run out of there.
But no, it's great. Honestly, that's exceptionally on brand for what I say. Whenever I go into businesses, I'm always like, everything you do aids getting on the phone. You can't influence people unless you're on the phone or in front of them on a VC or in person. So yeah, that I echo that. Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for your time, Emily. In terms of like people reaching out to you, like what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in Sourcewell or just networking with you, etc.?
LinkedIn, I'd say. Emily White, Sourcewell. I'll be on LinkedIn. I'm also on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, it's called Recruitment Secrets.
Love it. Amazing. Well, look, thank you very much. If you've got this far, people, like, subscribe, do all that kind of good stuff. The newsletter's booming right now, so please go and have a look at that. If you miss an episode, you can basically get all the lowdown on every single episode. Follow Emily, follow me, all that kind of good stuff. Thank you very much, and until next time.